dining service on campus and what that means to your campus and your administration. And I'm drawing a blank on what the second session is. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's our own Catherine Ingerson. How could I forget that? She's talking about the ideal dining hall. So we will see our own Catherine today. We have presenters from around the country scheduled for the next 3 weeks. And they'll be talking on everything from robotic delivery to how kiosks can help increase your customer satisfaction, a whole gamut to the CDC is speaking on policy and creating ideal dining spaces to inclusion and diversity. We will have 2 full days of conference on July 9th and 10th. On July 9th, Horst Schulze, who put customer service in as a culture at the Ritz-Carlton, will be speaking. And on the 10th, we have Mary Frances Winters, who will be talking about inclusion happens with I. So we have 4 weeks of learning sessions. And the great news is if you can't catch a session, we have them on demand for 30 days after the conclusion of the conference. So we have probably close to 12.5 learning sessions that will be available for those 30 days. So that's, Catherine, I'm not sure if you had a screenshot of the virtual platform, but I understand there will be a Zoom link on Learning Connections that will load you all right in to view the learning sessions that day. So, Catherine, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't miss anything. I will share this real quick just so you can see. Hopefully you're seeing my NACUF screen, because I tend to miss the wrong screen or pick the wrong screen. So is that what everybody's seeing? Yes, yep. Nick? Okay, grand. Okay, so like Susan was saying, the sessions are there's Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And what we've done is we've created because the registration process is a little delicate. It's a stepped process, if you will. So what we've done to assist with that is we've created a Zoom meeting for the sessions. So after this morning's session is over, you will get a separate email. We didn't quite get it together before we sent out the morning email, but you'll get a separate email that will be about the afternoon sessions, and you'll be able to just click on that link, and we'll be projecting the sessions for you here. So if you didn't register or you started registering and you said, this is really complicated and I don't think I'm doing something right, don't sweat it. You still have a way to see and participate in the content. So, yay. Susan, right. Anything
else? No, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate the opportunity to have a few minutes to talk about this. And remember, everyone, rise up and inspire.
Rise up and inspire. I can't say it like Darnell did, but we'll just leave that with him. All right. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to shift gears, if you will. And this is our first installment of the day in the life of. Not sure. I was trying to think of other names or other like a catchphrase, but I think day in the life of works well. So this morning joining us is dining, and we've got Chef Dawn, and we've got Michael Walraven, And so first, guys, let's do an introduce yourselves. Don, we'll start with you. I'm gonna put you on the spot since you made me have a little bit of heart palpitations thinking that you weren't going to be here this morning. So we will start with you, and introduce yourself and tell us what your role is, and then we'll go from there.
I thought I could ad lib.
Do what?
I thought I could ad lib. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You're gonna have to get close though, or yell, one of the two.
Okay. Well, my role here, I'm coming at you live from O House dining room. Wow, we got some reverb going on here. But I've been on board with UGA for 10 years. I've been at O House for, I believe it's about 6 years. I started off at the Summit, was there for 2 years as a cook, and then 2 years at Snelling. Now, count yourselves lucky because we're having a little economic downturn. We're all getting paid to stay home. I am at UGA because at the last economic downturn, I was working at a country club and they started chopping everybody and I was chopped. So the last economic hardships we had, I actually lost my job and I got hired at UGA 2 weeks before my unemployment ran out. So anyway, I am very appreciative of what we have now. As I said, I'm a chef here, and you think of the chef in the white jacket. I put that on for today. I'm actually wearing a t-shirt, and I've got the hat here. Oh, this is from our last special event that we did with the chef's recipes. Traditionally, that's what a chef would wear. We have the short sleeve coats here at UGA. But you wear the long sleeve ones that keeps you from getting burnt. So how much time do I have? Are we going back and forth between the two of us or?
Yeah, time out. We're gonna let Michael introduce himself and tell what he does, and then I think we'll go in after Michael introduces himself, then we'll come back to you, Don, and you can tell us what it is that you do every day, from arrive, pre-arrive, whichever you prefer, to what it is that you do.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'll fade back here, Michael.
Okay, Michael.
The screen. Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Walraven. I work at the Summit Dining Hall. I am a floater there, so I work all the various positions that we have to offer, from janitor to dish room to making your burritos. I do it all. I've been working with UGA for, let's see, I have some notes here, for 3 years and 4 months and 7 days. And let's see, that is who I am, and that is what I do. So I suppose I will let us lend this to the back and forth flow of nature.
Back to Don. Yeah, so we'll let him, and then Michael, you can take over. Don, don't get crazy.
Let's see, am I back?
You're back.
Okay, I'm back. So a little bit about my history. I've been a chef, or been in the business, I'll say, for about 42 years. I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America 39 years ago this past May. So I've been around the block a little bit. When I got out of the Culinary Institute, I started working for a Meridian hotel chain, which at the time was a small boutique hotel. They had a couple places, Boston, Houston, San Francisco, New York City, and they're owned by Air France. And all the chefs and the upper management were all French. And the cool thing about that was, being Air France, they had the Concorde jets, and they would fly this stuff over from France, truffles, fresh truffles and Dover sole, and you name it, all these super fresh, exotic ingredients that, most chefs would not get a chance to see back in the day. And then working with these really great classically trained chefs. These guys, they started off in tech school when they were 13 years old, and then worked in restaurants, their whole lives, and that was their passion, their thing, what they did. So working with those guys, it kind of set the bar for me throughout my career to aspire to a higher standard. And I didn't really get it until I actually went over to France, because my chef always used to say, oh, over there, everything is so much more better and different. And some of what it is, there's a lot of mediocre food over there. But the average restaurant kitchen, the person in charge of that kitchen has been to tech school, has been through several years of training. So there is a certain standard of proficiency, where over here in the United States, if your friend tells you that you make good chicken and waffles, you think, well, I'm going to open a restaurant and, make chicken and waffles, and, it's going to be cool, and I'm going to get rich, But the restaurant business is not a business to get rich in. The profit margin is so slim, 3, 5, 7, 10% if you're lucky, that you have to do more than just do chicken and waffles. The chef's job is, well, it's primarily, you think of it as cooking. When I went to a culinary institute, the classes were 3 weeks long. They were called a block. And I think it was 9 weeks before we actually got into the kitchen. And a lot of people coming up there, like myself, I went to college for 2 years, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? And I started working in restaurants. I think I was making $1.90 an hour. And I showed up for work, and I worked hard, and the chef gave me a raise to $2.10. And I'm thinking to myself, man, it's going to be a long time before I can make a living at this, unless I get some kind of school training or something. So that's one reason I went to a culinary school. And I completely lost my train of thought here.
All right, so you walk in the door.
Yes, that's it.
Walk in the door, and what? What happened?
Walked in the door at culinary school, and all these kids are up there thinking, I'm going to be a chef, and you did not get into a kitchen until you had been there for 9 weeks. And there's actually a pretty high dropout rate there, because you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to start doing this. And we had culinary French, we had sanitation, we had some basic accounting classes, business classes, and the kids were like, I didn't come to school to do this. I wanted to be a cook, So we finally got into the cooking classes. And back then, 1979 is actually when I went to school. The Culinary Institute still had a lot of old school European chefs. We had a Swedish chef who's straight out of Sesame Street. His big joke was, get me a sheet pan. And the accent, he'd spell out sheet, S-H-E-E-T. He was a little more Swedish sounding than I was. And then we had the Italian chef, Bagna, and he would send students to the next chef's classroom, and he'd say, go over to Chef Schmo and get me a cup of flour, because I need to make some hollandaise. Well, there is no flour in hollandaise. It's just an egg and butter emulsion. So you go over next door and get the flour. Oh, Chef Bagna wants a flour for the hollandaise, do you? Does he? He's like, well, yeah. And then you go back and Bagna say, oh, there's no flour in hollandaise. You write me a nice report. So it was eye-opening and a lot of fun. I don't know if a lot of y'all know this, but the Howard Johnson's chain back in the 60s had a classically trained chef you might have heard of, Jacques Pepin, and he was their corporate chef for Howard Johnson's in the 60s and maybe into the 70s. And he went on to Notebook and TV notoriety and founded the French Culinary Academy in New York City. But I remember eating at Howard Johnson's as a kid because I love the fried clam strips. And that's probably why. He was probably using fresh clams at his place and breading them up right and frying them up right. Anyway.
So, House.
House. Okay, so my job here is a little bit of everything. I come in the morning, and first thing I do is I check with my opening assistant manager, Henry. You couldn't ask for a better opening assistant manager. You know he's going to be here, and he's got things running when you get here. So I come in and I say, hey, what's going on? How's everything? And who's here today? Because not everybody's always here today. That's a big part of coming into work. So you check with him and see, who's here. And then I try to make the rounds and say hi to everybody because that's a nice thing to do and make everybody feel good. I don't always make it. Sometimes there'll be some little crisis that, needs attending to. And then I could possibly help out cooking breakfast. My breakfast cook will say, no, he never does that. But every now and then I do. I walk through the entire serving line and I look at all the food. I make sure everything looks eye appealing because that's a question I always ask when I do a class. I said, what do people eat with? And they always say a fork, but you eat with your eyes. So, we've got these serving lines. So I walk through and I make sure everything looks good. And if it doesn't, I want to know why. Or, I change out the pan. And it's kind of an indication of what's going on in the kitchen when you walk through the line and you see something's not out or something doesn't look right or something's burnt. It usually means we're shorthanded. Somebody called out in the kitchen. So I'll go back and I'll check with my lead cook, Chuck, he's a rock, and ask him how everything is and, who's there. And then I normally go back into the stock room and I'll talk to my two stockroom clerks who are also stellar. And I'd like to find out, what has arrived, what deliveries are here. If we've got a delivery, are we short something? If we're short something, have they made arrangements to get it from somebody else? Or are we going to get it from another unit? Or is it going to come later or what have you? Then I like to continue the rounds. I go over the bake shop. I go over the salad shop, check on everybody, make sure they've got all the ingredients they need for the day, and do they understand the recipes, and what kind of maybe leftovers do we have to extras? We call them extras. We don't call them leftovers. What kind of extras we have for the day that we need to get rid of, because we watch our pennies here too. So if we have something that's servable, we don't want to throw it away. We want to serve it. And let's see, after that, I normally check my emails to see what's going on out there in the administrative world. Then my lead cook might tell me that he's shorthanded and he's got too many recipes for the day and he needs me to help do a recipe. Doesn't normally happen because my crew is so stellar. I really have a great crew at O-House. Props to all y'all. They handle everything. They're great. I try to give all of my cooks, my lead cooks, the room to run things. I don't want to be, breathing over their shoulder all the time. I'd let them make a mistake if they, need to, so they can figure out how to fix it, or let them work through a problem. I don't want to, I've worked in places where chefs is always on your back inspecting everything, and it's not the chef that I want to be. I've worked with the Gordon Ramsays before. Don't want to be that guy. I used to be that guy. And it's not a good thing to have your crew work because they fear you. You want them to work because they respect you and they like working for you and they like working at the places they're working. So yeah,
One of the comments that came in said that Chef Don is a jack of all trades. He does it all: recipes, dishwashing, housekeeping, managing, counselor, good guy, and bad guy.
Who said that?
I don't. Andrea.
Andrea. Oh, well, thank you, Andrea. I got 20 for you when you come back when I see you again. I mean, really, that's what you need to do. You know, if you're not leading by example, then you're not doing the right thing because, you know, I take out the garbage, you know, I clean out a garbage can because I'm asking somebody else to do it. And why should I do it? Why should they do a job that I'm not willing to do? I don't want to be doing it all the time because you can easily, in my position, you can get stuck doing a spot. Like I could get stuck. I try to stay away from the Mongolian grill, A, because it's so damn hot, and B, because it's busy over there. And if I get over there and start doing it, it's going to be hard for me to get off of that spot and go someplace else that, you know, I'm like the guy sticking my finger in the dam where it has a hole in it, you know. So if you're stuck there, if your finger in the hole, then you can't go over there and plug the other leak, you know. So anyway, that's what I kind of. I mean, I change light bulbs. I try not to call maintenance in here for something stupid like that. You know, the hand sink's not working. I'll change out the batteries and, you know, all that little stuff. It just the chef just tries to keep things flowing. You know, he wants to make sure the business is going well and the customers are coming in and everybody's getting taken care of. And, you know, I'm like oil in the cogs.
Okay. All right. Michael, you want to jump in and tell us about your day?
All right. So let me give you a little bit about who I am and then in preparation, I'm not quite as ab lib as some, so I will not read from this, but I did prepare a 5, 6, 7-page manuscript with which to derive information from, but I won't be drawing from that, so you don't have to worry.
Okay,
But
so you did get that this is an hour-long session, right? Okay.
I know, but you know, I can really fill that 20 minutes with some fantastic, highly dense information.
Okay.
But instead, let me bounce around a little bit. So I was born in, I see yours there, Don. I was born in Long Beach, California in 1980, and I grew up in Southern California with my mother and father and sister. And I was very lucky to grow up with a great grandmother. My mama Selma was born in 1904. And so I got to grow up with stories about her living through the Great Depression, going to her town on a horse each day and being dropped off at school off of a horse. And the very first time she ever rode in a rumble seat, if you know what a rumble seat is, and if not, Google that. So I see now as I've grown older, that was kind of some of my first connection with this passion I have for history and for ancestry, which I know I was privileged to chat with Don some when he was spending time at the summit with us about some of our local history, specifically some of our information about Skull Shoals and the prehistoric and historic sites out there. But Athens is filled with tremendous history. The world is filled with tremendous history. I moved here to Georgia when I was about 12, which was 1992. That was following a pretty good recession that we were experiencing and a major drop off in the aerospace industry, with which my father was a CNC mill operator. So we had family here in Georgia. We moved on over here to Georgia. And I started working around the age of 13, doing stocking crews with my mother, who was a manager at Dollar Tree at the time. And since then, I have had many jobs, a lot of construction, land clearing, tremendous amount of restaurant work, management, cinemas. I've worked as a theater projectionist, and I'm also a certified automobile mechanic. I have a degree in automotive technologies, and my ASCs are no longer active. They have expired, but I did have my ASC in automotive electronics, suspensions, alignment, and general technicians. So I've done a lot of different jobs. And the one thing I've learned is every job has some similarities. Once you've mastered one thing, not to say that I've mastered anything in particular, but there's a saying, once you find a path, one path, that path can lead you to anywhere you want to go. So whether it is being observant with trying to diagnose a technical problem with a vehicle, or, you know, you're trying to cut down a tree, there's going to be similar processes that we go through. And so here I am now at the summit where I work. Let's see. That catches me up to page 2. And actually, I recall the first time I ever came to the summit, walking through our lovely green space to the Joe Frank Harris house. And I thought to myself, I have no idea who Joe Frank Harris is. And again, there's so much history. Joe Frank Harris was our 83rd governor of Georgia. He was a Democrat who ran Georgia from 1983 through 1991. And so he stopped being governor shortly after I arrived here, which I actually remember coming here about 2 weeks after the big snowstorm of like, was it 90? Everybody, all I ever heard was about this snowstorm. And so I thought the following year, certainly we would get snow. I never saw snow in Georgia for like a decade thereafter. I really felt ripped off coming from Southern California. All I got here was humidity. It was like the exact same environment, just much humid, much more humid. But walking up to my first job interview at the Joe Frank Harris house, it's just a lovely grounds. UGA has a lot of beautiful landscaping, and I have a great appreciation for the trees on our campus. The Joe Frank Harris house is located directly across the street from our drafting school, the Driftwood Studios, and so Driftmeyer Woods is located right across the street from the summit. The Driftmeyer Woods are the oldest woods on UGA campus. They haven't been harvested for 175 years. You might not be able to notice it because there's just tremendous erosion in that small patch of woods. But it was the site of Georgia's first 4-H camp in, I want to say 1935. You can still find some of those camp remains right there in that maybe 2-3 square acres worth of woods there. And I love working for UGA because it connects me with all those spots throughout our campus. Specifically as to what I do, I am a floater. So each day I come in, I clock in, I speak with management, find out where I'm most needed. I know I'm needed everywhere, but I got to find that spot where I am most needed, most desired, and make myself fit there. So we have probably a dozen different positions from all of our different food stations to support in the back, beverages, custodial work. I worked the first 2 years of my job working primarily as a supervisor in the dish pit, or dish room. Sorry, I call it a pit, but it's a lovely, lovely pit. And so no matter where I am during the course of the day, I feel like my job is 2 layers. The first layer is the physical element of what I do. You know, I am physically creating food or physically literally moving things around. That element is rewarding, keeps you in shape. You know, if you're working on the grill, you know you're going to have a tremendous amount of weight loss because you're going to sweat profusely for 7 hours. If you're working back in the dish room, you know you're probably going to get filthy.
You're going to get sweaty back there too.
Yeah, filthy, sweaty. But back there, you can't tell the sweat from the overspray from the machine. So you just feel kind of like you got to embrace it, you know? Somewhat
it's a sauna.
The janitor position.
Sauna. That's what we should name.
Yeah, that's the sauna room, the sauna pit, as I'll call it from now on. And ironically, I think janitor keeps me cleanest of all of our positions, unless there's something particularly outstanding that day. That's one of my favorite positions, Kirti. So there's that layer to what we do, which is making food. I've done that in many different restaurants. I worked at Subway. I worked at Gumby's Pizza here in Athens before it went defunct for years. I worked Papa John's as a manager.
Are they?
Honestly, as I looked at my list, I mean, the list goes on and on. I've worked a lot of jobs. They all have a similarity in the physicality of what you do. And I think it becomes unique my job and each of our individual jobs become unique at the second layer, where it's our layer where we create connections with our guests. One of the most valuable jobs I've ever had was I was a manager, the general manager for Vision Video. If any of you all out there remember Vision Video. But after working there for years, it was something unique in that we provided a service which you could kind of get anywhere, videos. But we were one of the very last stores in the entire country to close, and that was primarily because we had almost a cult-like following, because we really focused on customer service. Something I learned was I personally don't really watch horror movies. Here or there maybe, but it's not my thing. However, if you come to me and I ask you, name a couple of movies you've enjoyed in the past, and 2 or 3 of them are horror movies, then I know that I can recommend you an extremely good horror movie, whether it's in English or Spanish or Korean. Just because it's not my genre, my love, doesn't mean I can't learn about it and become an expert on it on your behalf. And in talking with people, if they say that they loved, a couple good horror movies, then I also know that they may not want to watch Groundhog's Day, which is my favorite movie, or the new Phineas and Ferb cartoon that just came out, because I love really boring foreign films and lectures and documentaries, or zany funniness. I see somebody's comment here, 5 for 5 at Vision Video was my jam for like 10 years. And I feel like when we lost Vision Video and places like that, we didn't just lose a video store, we lost a hub of communication for everybody, for our community, and kind of like an ambassador. We were ambassadors for our community. And that's something we have an opportunity to do with the summit, with our dining services. We are ambassadors for UGA and for Athens community as a whole. So I deeply love learning, having learned how to connect with people, discussing with our customers some of the things that they enjoy. It's great working with students and being surrounded by students, because I'm a data nerd. So I will ask every single student that we work with what their field of study is, what their passions are, how they kind of got to that point. I always introduce myself and where I come from. My last name is Walraven. It's Dutch German, and my family immigrated to the United States in the late 1800s. And I'll introduce myself oddly in that manner, and then explore every person that I find delicately where they come from. And the key to that is, and I wrote this down, the key to customer service, I feel, is do not treat the customer the way you want to be treated. Don't treat the customer the way that you want to be treated. Treat the customer the way that they want to be treated. Because we're all vastly different people. Our words and our actions translate into different things for different people. And if I come after everybody with a zealous hello and just always want to know more, that can be very off-putting. I personally hate going. I don't want to use the word hate. I really dislike going to Moe's. I really love their burritos, but I really don't like that welcome to Moe's thing. And having many people that I know, some of which have worked there, I know that they don't necessarily like to say welcome to Moe's, and I don't like being yelled at. So I try and cater, whether I'm providing food service or video service, gently try and learn what the customer is requiring. Some people just require a hamburger. Some people want to stand and watch me make a Philly sandwich. And when I'm at the Philly Grill, one of my loves is efficiency, laying out the grill and being extremely organized. And I've actually had three different students or guests ask me, like, are you an engineer? Do you have a background in engineering or drafting? Because you do that in an extremely precise way. And yes, I do have a background in engineering. And thank you. I'm glad that they noticed that. It's important to notice things. But truly the key, I feel, to communication is feeling somebody out gently, providing the basic service of what we do. I'm making you a hamburger, let's say. And during the process of that, if I'm still engaging with my coworker, to make sure that the way that I'm engaging is professional, and to conduct myself with a degree of professionalism. And as I get to know people, perhaps that professionalism is broken away some so that we can share more personal information with each other. I know when I was at Vision Video, I would have people come in and talk to me and literally cry for 30 minutes about a divorce they were going through, or a learning issue that a lot of people have trouble with math. A lot of people have various kinds of challenges in life. And there's honestly times where that's what my service is. That is what I provide, a place for people to share. And that's kind of an element of humanity. And again, many times people just want their hamburger and they want it done well, precisely, and in whatever manner they want. I'll stop here, but one of my best friends, he loves hamburgers. We worked together for years. He eats a hamburger and it's bread, the burger, and cheese. There's no ketchup, there's no salt, there's no pepper, there is nothing. It's bread and cheese and a burger. And even in that manner, there is a burger that he thinks is a good burger, and there's a burger that's not such a good burger. When I worked at Mexicali Grill, I was always startled when people asked for a taco salad with meat and cheese, because to me, that's not a salad, that's meat and cheese. But you don't say that. You say, what a lovely choice for a taco salad. And then you go and you provide them what they're looking for. And even if it's just something plain, they're going to be just as passionate about that plain hamburger as if you had made them, a 5-tier gourmet burger. So no matter what we're doing, whether it's simple, difficult, etc., I think doing your job the way that the customer wants you to do it, within degrees. You can't go and make them a 12-egg omelet, which I have been asked for, but you can provide them the same kind of service that you would provide, not necessarily yourself, but your family. Whenever I make something, whenever I do something, I think about my great-grandmother. I think about my mom, and I live here with my family, my wife, Sabrina, and my son, Henry, who are hiding in a corner here. But when I provide food for other people and services, come, this is,
Hi.
I really do have a wife, Sabrina. Though my son, Henry, you want to pop your head in real quick? And he says, okay. But these are the people that we make food for, no matter if it's for a stranger or for a loved one.
Here's Henry.
You didn't okay, good enough. Thanks, guys. I try and maintain my integrity and my passion for doing a good job. If I'm scrubbing a floor, or if I'm building a house or repairing a vehicle, everything we do can have tremendous value. And yeah, I come in, I go where they tell me to. I can open, operate, and close any of our positions, from dish room to janitor, beverage, and any of the food stations in between. And so I feel very grateful to have a place that I can come and connect with people. So wonderful to connect with the students and to be able to chat with them. Before this pandemic has occurred, I was working and talking a lot with a number of our students to create a travel brochure for Athens for our students and people who are coming into our community that might not be aware that we have 300-year-old ghost towns within a 30-minute drive. And we have a 7,000-year-old Native American village within a 30-minute drive of us. Our mills, millage is named because it was the edge of the mill community. So that was the dividing line between the industrial side of Athens and the academic side of Athens. And you can go explore the old mills. You can see the aqueduct works that are still running along the Oconee rivers, and stand in those aqueducts that 200 years ago provided the energy needed to make the textiles for Athens, because Athens was the textile hub of the entire South. That is what Athens was, is we were the textile technological center of the entire South, which is one of the reasons it was spared during the Civil War, because the northern infrastructures, they wanted to maintain that infrastructure. So I've been working with students up until a few months ago to kind of create a little who's who and where's where guide to Athens. So when you come in, you might not know that we have 5,000-year-old petroglyphs sitting in front of Baldwin Hall, but we do, and that's important. And providing that kind of information for the students and for our community is just another wonderful layer of what I do and what we can all do in our jobs. Thank you.
All right, so let's open up the floor for questions and see if anybody has any questions for you guys. About a day in the life of you guys. Let's see. Any takers? Michael, somebody wants to know if you've made that brochure available yet.
No, I was actually kind of working with some of our students, Jalen, and there were 4 or 5 others that would actually hound me on a daily basis. Like, did you get it done yet? Did you get it done? No, I haven't actually gotten it done yet. But I would really like to, and I could, when we're all back in session and able to see each other face to face, it's one of my greatest joys to share what I've learned and to hear what other people have learned. Don can attest to that, because I remember when we were chatting about Skull Shoals, he mentioned the mineral springs located across the street from Skull Shoals, which was a brothel until 1928 when it burned down. It's just incredible. I mean, everything you look at has a history, has a past. And thinking about some of our seminars and stuff with Randolph, and some of the tensions and frustrations that we all share about our current situation and inequality, etc. The key is always education, and to educate ourselves from every different perspective. You know, if I read a book, I'm not going to read a book about World War II written from the English perspective exclusively. There are books all over the world that get translated. So read about World War II from the perspective of a Japanese officer who served in, Burma. Learn about things from every possible vantage point, and we can learn more about ourselves. So,
Don, Debbie wants to know, what would you be if you were not a chef?
Oh, I would definitely be a rock star. No, that's one reason I'm not a chef, because I'm a musician, and I realized early on that I did not have the talent. Unlike Alan Walsh, I did not have the talent to succeed as a professional musician.
Go Al!
But over the years, I would say I really like to garden. I would probably be a landscape architect, I think, or a veterinarian, because I like animals. I can do carpentry, and I can do electrical work, and I can do plumbing, and I can work on cars, but I've really only cooked for my living my whole life. Before, in high school, I helped out. I dug ditches in Georgia red clay, putting in sprinkler systems, and I didn't want to do that, baby. And then briefly for a while, I worked for a friend of mine who had a startup company doing some marketing, and I was on the phone all day sitting on my butt and didn't want to do that. So yeah, a chef, I think. It's funny because I moved here in '68. My dad came here to teach at UGA. And then my mom subsequently went back and got her master's, and she worked here also. And so they both had higher degrees of education. And I went, like I said, I went to college for 2 years and dropped out. I've got my associates. My brother has his master's degree, and he's a carpenter. And my other brother is a landscaper, tree surgeon. So despite the fact that my parents had these degrees, we all like working with our hands.
So it wouldn't be a dining session without a question of food
I
recommendation.
saw that one about the pork loin. Well, my particular favorite for pork is I like a rosemary and garlic combination. A good rub of salt and pepper, and rosemary and garlic are my go-to for pork. That you cut up some sprigs of it, and you can get the garlic, peel it, and cut the cloves up in little slivers, and get your knife and poke some holes in the pork itself, and then put a little sliver of that garlic into the pork meat, and that way the garlic will kind of come into the meat, and then put some sprigs of rosemary underneath and on top, and that flavor will get right into that meat. And that's my personal favorite. And don't cook the hell out of that thing. Keep it a little bit pink, you know, and then maybe a little bit of water or wine in the pan. I would put it on I like putting it on a rack so you get the juices drip down, and that way you have a little pan juice to spoon over your meat once you finish slicing it. And meat, always let it rest after it comes out of the oven. You don't want to get your hot piece of meat, even though you're starving, it smells so good. You don't want to immediately slice into it and eat it, because what happens, all these juices are circulating because of the heat. And once you cut that piece of meat, it's like air coming out of a balloon. All that meat comes out of there and it leaves your meat dry. So it starts slowing down and they stay in the meat. So let it cool off, you know, a good 5-10 minutes before you cut your meat. Yeah, I love that video that Steve did with the butcher shop. I actually went to Stripling's that afternoon and picked up some steaks for dinner. And they do have a killer butcher shop there. And they also, I did not realize this, even though they're right down the street from me pretty much. I live in Watkinsville, so right down 53, known as Hog Mountain Road. I don't know what the history of that is, Michael, but that's always infatuated me, Hog Mountain Road. It goes all the way up to Brazelton in various forms. It's not all connected, but I've never seen a mountain full of pigs there, so I don't know. But Striplings, they had USDA choice, you know, the fairly top of the line. And I paid $14 for a pound of New York strip. FYI, if you haven't been out there, it's fairly pricey. But they also had prime meat, and then that same steak and prime cost $22 for a pound. But they had nice fish too. They had halibut, flounder, tuna, crab legs. I didn't see what the prices were, but a pretty good selection of stuff. Well, if I got another minute or two, how much time we got? 10:51. All right, let me talk just a couple minutes. Cool thing about being a chef, I got into it because, well, I was a third of 3 boys. I was the last triad a girl. So I was young and I helped my mom out in the kitchen, you know, making Toll House cookies. And both of my parents are from Pennsylvania. My mom's of Russian extraction. So I grew up eating a mix of Americana meatloaf, and then we'd have stuffed cabbages, and we'd have pierogies, which are like the equivalent of a Russian empanada. They're a dough, and it's filled with traditionally potatoes. And my grandmother would come down and she'd make a prune one, which is a lot better than it sounds. And my grandfather was a baker. I did not know him. He died when my mom was 18. So I feel like I have it in my blood a little bit. But I got into it to travel. Since I got out of culinary school in New York, I moved to Houston, Texas. I lived there for a year. And they were going to send me over to France to work in a 4-star restaurant. And if you've ever been to Houston, you live there for a year, well, you know, that's enough. It's hot. There's a lot of bugs. The traffic is god awful. If they sent me over there for a year, I would have to sign up for at least another year in Houston. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. The reason I moved to Houston, besides a good job, I was making, I think, $12,500 a year back then. I was living pretty good. Yeah, nice apartment and a car.
Compared to your $2 an hour.
Yeah, that was quite a step up there for $2 an hour. Okay. Well, okay. $2 an hour, $2.10 an hour here in Athens, Georgia. I had an apartment on Pulaski Street with my best friend. We paid $60 a piece for a month. $120 for a 2-bedroom place that was brand new, freshly painted. So you could live back then. I don't know what happened. I think Hope Scholarship or the Olympics. My wife always says the Olympics, the rent started getting jacked up. I mean, damn, I had pocket money and drinking money and concert money, $2.10, it's crazy. And I maybe worked a little bit of overtime, but hell, even overtime back then was $2.50 or whatever the heck it was, it still wasn't very much. So it's just crazy the way, oh, there's a Hog Mountain thing there. Anyway, so I worked in Texas, and then I did a stint up in Maine for the summer working at a camp. And then I went to Boston to the Meridian Hotel there, and the chef there called my chef in Houston. And he said, do you want to hire this guy? And the guy said, no. And he said, well, we're desperate, so they hired me. And I worked for them for a year, and they had a really good pastry chef who's from Wales, Lynn Mansell. You can check him out. He worked at the big casino in Connecticut. I can't remember it. And just phenomenal pastry chef. And he went to work at a Sheraton that he had just built, a huge Sheraton in Copley Plaza in Boston. And they had 4 restaurants and a bake shop and banquet capacity for a couple thousand people. And I called him up and I said, hey, Lynn, I'd like to get into pastries, and, can you help me get in the door here? And he got my foot in the door at the hotel. They didn't have an opening in the bake shop. So I worked in their French brasserie line for about 9 months, and they finally had an opening in the bake shop, and I got stuck in the production of it. We would get 2 16-foot tables and end to end, and we would make Black Forest cake, and one guy would go around, slice a cake and put the 3 different layers. And the next guy would plop on the whipped cream and smooth it out. The next guy would put on the cherries, and the next guy would put the layer on. We just go around and around the circle. So that was my baking experience. It was really good. Yeah, exactly. Because we just had so many, and we had one baker who just did all the really, really nice stuff, so anyway, I'm losing track of it. So, okay, I worked in Boston, and then I worked at the 2 places in Boston. Then I worked out in the Cape Cod for a summer. And then my chef from Houston took a job at the Peabody Hotel in Memphis. And they had a fine dining restaurant there. And he must have liked me or knew I worked like a dog, because he called me up and offered me a job. And Memphis is pretty cool. If you like to fish and you like barbecue, which I like both, it's a pretty nice place, but it's really hot as hell in Memphis. And to get to Memphis from anywhere, you have to fly or drive forever to get anywhere. I did 2 years Memphis at the Peabody Hotel, and they worked my butt off. I'm pretty slender now. If you know me, I've actually lost weight during this epidemic thing. I'm down to 151 from 160. Back then I was 135 pounds. Because I worked nine hours a day, 5 days a week. Back then I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And that was kind of the standard. That was my first management position. And that's kind of standard in the industry, for management and lower level management in a big operation or even small operations. You're just expected to be there. And my French chef, that's what he was used to. He told me when he started off cooking, he would go into the restaurant at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he would set up and work through until 1 o'clock in the afternoon after lunch. Then he'd take a break for an hour and a half to 2 hours, come back to work at 3, and then close down the restaurant at 10 o'clock at night. And that was, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. That was just what they're used to, and that's what they expected. If you work for a Frenchman or a German, that's what they expected of you, to work that much. So it was what I was doing before I came to UGA. I didn't know that you could have a weekend off until I came to university. I was like, oh, this is what people do on the weekend. They have friends over and they drink a beer and they go out someplace. I was like, oh my God, this is a godsend. We always talk about, well, you don't get paid that well at university, but it's a trade-off. And that It really is true. If you have never worked any place besides the university in food services, you just don't realize how tough it is, out there.
All right, so we got a minute and a half. So you got.
All right, wait, one more thing.
No,
Okay, cool.
What,
The good thing about working as a chef, you can get a job anywhere, just about. If you're a good chef or a good cook, you can get a job anywhere. There's a lot of creativity and artistry once you get a little bit of skill level and somebody to trust you. And like I said, you'll never go hungry because you can always eat in the restaurant, right? Okay. I always tell people if they're going to be a chef, you're going to work nights, weekends, and holidays. You're going to work with a Gordon Ramsay who yells at you, maybe not have any breaks. It's very labor intensive. You're going to be on your feet all the time. I've got flat feet. My feet have been killing me for years. Very high stress. The chef's reputation is only as good as his last meal. That's what they always say. The last meal that you send out, if the customer complains about it, it wipes out the slate. It's like, oh my God, I've served 1,000 people a day and they're great, but 1,001, the end of the world. Oh my God. It's very stressful because mealtime, well, not here so much, but still, we served breakfast at 7 and lunch at, 10, swap over. So you have a deadline all the time. So every day there's a deadline that you have to meet. Oops, I'm getting a beep. Does that mean I'm done?
No, I was about to mute you though.
Oh, okay.
But we want to know what advice we're going to go over by 1 minute. So you have 30 seconds. Let me get my timer.
What's advice? What?
Advice you have for folks returning in the fall.
Advice. My advice is be appreciative that you have got to sit this out and get paid for it. Look out for your fellow coworker. Right now, we got a little time before you come back. Quarantine yourself, kind of be careful, wash your hands, wear a mask, because you're going to come back here and anything that you've been doing the last couple of weeks, is going to affect what happens to you and affect all your coworkers. Look out for your fellow man and freaking vote this year. Okay. If you haven't voted, get out there and vote. Vote.
Yes.
You know what's going on in the world and you know kind of how to change it. Get out and vote.
All
That's
right.
my advice.
That was your 30 seconds.
Okay. It ran over. Thank you very much. I appreciate this time. Miss everybody. I've actually slept better the last 2 nights because I've had to come into work. Something about my brain turning over, knowing I have to go to sleep because my sleep has been crazy this last couple of weeks. All right, that's all. Bye.
Right,
love you all.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Coming back in the fall, I would suggest to everybody, firstly, educate yourself. There is a tremendous amount of information that is not being made available to us, or that you have to seek out. It's not that it's not being made available. You have to seek out data, statistics. I've mentioned it a number of times. Wearing a mask reduces the spread of COVID-19 by 75%. 75% reduction. Wear a mask. There's absolutely no reason in the world not to. Wear your mask everywhere you go. This is information that 75% came out of UGA, Harvard, and Hong Kong separate university studies. Wear your mask and educate yourself. And lastly, when you can, I saw the question about restaurants in Athens. I made an answer to that 10 years ago when I was interviewed for Athens Magazine. Favorite restaurants. Of those restaurants, all of them are now defunct, except for La Estrella. La Estrella on Hawthorne Avenue. I'm assuming it's still open. Go and enjoy. It's wonderful when you can.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your morning. Don't forget the email you will get here shortly about the NACUF session that starts this afternoon at 1, and they're with our very own Catherine Ingerson from Dining, our dietitian. So that's going to be at 1, and then followed by our 2 o'clock regular 2 o'clock session this afternoon as well. So lots more opportunities to see each other today, and look forward to seeing everybody. And if you have questions about any of the session times or names or anything like that, just reach out to the or respond to the Auxiliary Connections email, daily email, and we'll be able to answer those for you. Have a great rest of your morning, everybody. Bye.